Here we go. The Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab episode 831 for Monday, August 31st, 2020. And welcome to the Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab, the show where we take your questions, tips, and cool stuff found that you have sent in, and we mix them all together. We share your tips. We share your cool stuff found. We share our tips. We share our cool stuff found. We share your questions. We try to answer them or present them to the community for answers. Really, the goal is for all of us in the Mac Geek Gab family. That's you, that's me, that's him, everybody, to learn at least 5 new things every single time we get together. Sponsors for this episode include mintmobile.com/MGG, plushcare.com/MGG, and macsales.com. We've got more details about each of those to speak about in a bit. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton.
And here in Fairfield, Connecticut, this is John F. Braun.
How are you today, Mr. John F. Braun? We have a lot of stuff about networks and Wi-Fi, but networks in general and also Wi-Fi that we've been sort of queuing up. We have a lot of stuff about network storage that we've been queuing up, and then we have a lot of stuff. So I figure we'll start with a couple of kind of straight up questions, and then to get us rolling here, and then we'll dig into some of the network stuff and the geeky stuff and see what happens. But that sound good to you, John?
Indeed.
All right, cool. The first question comes from listener Bruce, who says, I want to put an out-of-office auto response to all incoming emails for a set period of time on all 4 of my email addresses. Can you assist in leading me to a user-friendly way to do this suitable for a senior citizen to manage? Absolutely, Bruce. Sure. So there are many ways to do this. My preferred way, I was going to say despite the fact that I'm a geek, but perhaps because of the fact that I'm a geek, is to do this with an email provider who will let me do it in their web interface. Because that way it's happening at the server level. I don't have to worry about anything on my computer. And quite frankly, it's someone else's problem to manage and make sure it works right. All I got to do is flip the switch and put the message in. The good news is both iCloud and Gmail make this super easy in their interfaces. And many others do as well. It's a pretty common feature of mail servers because our computers aren't necessarily going to be on and connected all the time and you want that autoresponder to be sent out, as quickly as possible to someone who just emailed you. Because if they emailed you something urgent, you want them to at least have a chance at knowing, hey, this message probably didn't make it, or isn't going to make it for a while. So that's the first place I'd look. And quite frankly, I have some other ideas and I'm happy to share them, but I really encourage you to go that route. That is, in my opinion, absolutely the best route. But you could use Apple Mail on your Mac for it. The other tech support, Dave, at Ask Dave Taylor, has a nice article up about how to use mail rules to implement something like this. And it's, again, fairly straightforward. If you're comfortable with mail rules, you probably don't even need to read that site, but it's always helpful to see how somebody else can do it. So those are my 2 thoughts. What do you think, John?
I'm with you. The web interface. I haven't, not my ISP, Optimum.
Yeah.
If I use their web interface, among the other things they let you do, like I think you can set a forward if you want to. But they also, let you set a I'm out of the office message.
Okay.
So that is absolutely the first place I look to.
For sure. You don't use your ISP's mail anymore, though, right? As your primary mail. I mean, I know we all have email accounts with our ISPs, but we don't like to use them, right?
I've tried to move everything I can away from that over to my .Mac.
There you go. Okay.
Account. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still got 1 or 2 things that are keyed on my email address, like as my username.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I can't change it.
I bet you could change your email address even if your username is still an email address from somewhere else.
When I do things, so it's the system that Quest Diagnostics when I get blood work.
Yeah.
The thing is, my key or my username is my ISP's email.
Okay.
But when they send things out, they're like, "Oh, where do you want to send the the invite?"
Sure.
For your appointment, and I give them my .mac address.
Gotcha.
There.
Gotcha.
They also, and there is no option to change your email address, which to me is lame.
That's interesting. Huh. I bet there is. I bet if you contacted customer service, they could do it. So.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, as yet another bonus tip in even just question number 1, Quest is one of the several, I'll say, maybe even many labs that has the ability to link directly to the health app on your iPhone. So you can, because the MyQuest app is old, right? Like it hasn't been updated in many years. And the way I know that is the interface on my phone is not built around the notch in the top of my phone. And in order to release an update for your app over the past, year, maybe 2 years, the Apple requires that you build screens for the iPhones 10, at the time 10, and then, et cetera, up to the 11. And theirs does not. So I don't think their app's been updated in years, or if it has, it's been very minimal updates. But you can link MyQuest, your MyQuest account to the health app, and then you can get all your data there. And of course, it aggregates it all together with, if you have to use something like LabCorp or somebody else, they all can link in there, which is pretty cool. The health app is actually a pretty cool thing. I've been tested.
I don't know if I have them linked.
You do it in the health app. You go into the health app. Well, we might as well just walk through it. So you launch the health app, and you go to, I think, you got to give me a second here. Go to tap on your picture in the upper right, which brings up your account. And then under accounts, you go to health records. And in health records, you can choose add account. And Quest is one of the ones there. And perhaps other health providers of yours. Of course, not every health provider is participating with an API to Apple, but this one certainly is. So there you go. It's a fun way to do it.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll fiddle with it later.
Yeah, good, because you're going to take us to Scott now, right?
Indeed. And let me get Scott up here. All right. Scott asks or says, I think I need to run some hardware diagnostics on my Mac. It has been years since I have needed to do this. In normal times, I would just take my Mac to the Apple Store and have them run it. However, this is not an option right now. So what do you say is the best tool for this? What is the cheapest tool for this? I assume they will not be the same. Okay, well, one thing you could try, though I've had mixed results here. But if you boot up your machine and you hold down the D for diagnostics, it'll run Apple's built-in diagnostics.
Okay.
My experience with them has not been great. And actually in the past, and I even have a dandy little article here, you may not be able to trust what it says. I had this actually happen once with an older version of the diagnostics. It came up and it said Apple hardware test reported an HDD alert. And this article goes into a bit more detail, but apparently if you upgraded the drive in certain older Macs to an SSD, it would think there's a problem with the SATA bus. And I have that article.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Huh.
Past that, the one that I would check out, Dave, so that it goes into a bit of detail here.
Yep.
But Micromat makes something called MacCheck.
Okay.
So we give that a check, and it'll show you the status of the power on self-test. It does an IO check, a battery test if you have a battery, memory, smart, your RAID status, volume structure, partition map. So a good first run. with this may be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Of course, Micromat. But if you if that comes up with problems, or you want to bring out the big guns, they of course also make TechTool Pro, and I think I just got an email that they just updated it to, I think, version 13.
Yeah, that's right.
So, that has tests that go into more detail. So,
cool. That's great.
That's what I got.
Yeah, I have nothing to argue with on that one. I have nothing to offer really. My only question really would be, what are your symptoms that lead you to think that you need to run hardware diagnostics? What's actually happening? Because that might help narrow down, oh, wait a minute. Okay, if you're seeing this, try that, kind of thing. But yeah. All right, cool. Well, now we get to start digging into some of the network stuff. That sound good to you, my friend?
Absolutely.
Cool. Listener Greg says, I've been having problems with my ISP, except to say, well, it's Spectrum. He says my internet will die for 20 to 30 seconds, and then it comes back to life. Spectrum's confirmed these network issues, seeing up to 40% packet loss on occasion, and my neighbors complain about it too. However, they've sent technicians twice. They tried charging me for the visits, and yet the problem persists. So I'm trying to figure out how to live with this issue. I've noticed my MacBook Pro has a harder time reconnecting than my iPhone or iPad. They're all in the same physical location, connecting wirelessly to the same router. But I find that it takes about 1 minute longer for my MacBook Pro to reconnect than at my other devices. Can you help me figure this out? So first of all, that sucks. And hopefully you can keep the pressure up on Spectrum to fix things in your neighborhood. I've been through this. Fortunately, it's been over a decade since I've had to wage a battle of this type. But really, it's just a matter of two things: beating down the door of the ISP and just having them send people out. Because when you get the right technician out, I've found that is the key to opening up the doors. And sometimes it's just, somebody that's more interested in solving problems than maybe some of the others are. And then, also calling the corporate office and asking to speak to whatever their customer service ninjas are. Office of the president is often the key to getting to those customer service ninjas, whatever they call themselves. So, that could be your thing. Now, as far as what you can do locally, so I start asking myself, John, what would the difference be between his MacBook Pro and his iPad and iPhone? And the first might be DNS, right? So go to System Preferences, Network, Wi-Fi, DNS. You can customize the DNS on your iOS devices too, but for whatever reason, we are all more likely to have customized DNS on our non-iOS devices. So that would be kind of my first thought, is just make sure whatever their network settings are, make sure they're the same as each other. So that would be step one. I don't know. What do you think, man?
This came up in another question too, and we had a little back and forth. Check your levels.
I'm sure his levels are problematic. I mean, I'm sure that's true of the neighborhood. I'm just trying to help him solve the why his MacBook takes so much longer to reconnect when things come back versus his iPad and iPhone. But I'm sure you're right. Sorry, go down that path. Yeah, explain to people what to do, please.
Yeah, the thing is, I think it helped me. So for when I was having a problem with packet loss, how do I know I had a problem with packet loss? Dave's tried and true trick is pinging from the terminal, pinging www.apple.com or whatever, something that exists and is reliable, and see if you get any drop. And I was. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that's problem number one. Problem number two was that my upstream voltage or power was way out of spec. It was like 55 dBmV, which is awful. It should be like, I think 48 or something is the upper end on a DOCSIS 3 modem. and mine was way out. So,
Sure.
I gave, when the guy came by, I'm like, here's the numbers. And he's like, yeah, that's bad. And, he went up on the pole and he brought his, super duper network analyzer. And he's like, yeah, it's a problem on our end. So
that's true. When you get the right,
if you got a tech that didn't know what test to run, because
yeah. No, that's really good advice. Because if you tell the tech, like, here's what the numbers are and they're bad, like that should alert them. If it doesn't, then also call the office of the president. But yeah.
And then, and then my numbers went back down to, I think, like 44 once they fixed whatever they fixed. I think they had to replace either rerun a cable, because, we got squirrels like everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Most people. And for whatever reason, squirrels love to chew on cable.
Yeah. Well, it's probably got some warmth to it, maybe. I mean, negligible.
Well, it could be a thermal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially hot weather or cold weather.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm just speculating. I don't know. Somebody. Yeah. My upstream levels are not, mine sit above 50, which is not great. In fact, maybe I should. The problem is I have zero issues. Of course, I say that while we're recording and live streaming a podcast. I should knock on some wood because, that's the last thing I need. But yeah, those are kind of high. I should look into that. That's not good. Anyway, that's a squirrel for a different moment. Yeah. All right. Time. So any thoughts about, you're totally right, by the way. Yeah. Find those numbers and report them to the tech. Any thoughts about why his Mac takes longer to reconnect than his other devices?
You may want to, I'd run Dabuki to see what's happening at the Wi-Fi level. That may help as well.
Yeah. I like
this. Because Dabuki, a lot of times when I'm diagnosing Wi-Fi issues on my MacBook Pro, Dabuki will show me what's happening. And sometimes what's happening is not what I want to happen. Like, I'm currently solving what I think is a Wi-Fi issue.
Sure.
And at one point, the priority of what it wanted to connect to was wrong. Well, how do I know that? Because Dabuki was telling me, oh, you're connected to this access point, not that access point. So
right. Oh,
and
right.
it'll show, the rate that's negotiated and some other things.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it might show it also shows what packets are going across too. So you could see like, what is it trying to connect to? Does your Mac maybe have something like ExpressVPN running on it? Or, or some other thing that's in the network stack that takes time to come up and run. Those things can, I don't know. Anyway, Big in VA in our chat room at live.mattgeekgab.com says, John, that maybe the coax cables are coated with walnut flavoring, and that's why the squirrels like them. So. All right. Let's see. Andrew writes, he says, I recently upgraded my internet speed to 400 megabits from 100. According to eero, my download speeds are 118 and upload 12. How should I test my internet speeds to find out my true speed? He says, currently I'm testing through my eero, which is plugged into my cable modem, and the device I'm testing with is connected to one of the eero satellites. Could this be the issue? So the short answer is yes, it could. It might not be, but it might be. The best way to test your internet connection speed is to connect to your, the absolute best way is to take your router out of the mix and connect your laptop via Ethernet to your cable modem. Anytime you connect a new device to your cable modem, you have to power cycle your cable modem, because most of us for a residential service only get one device connected to our cable modem at a time. Usually that's our router, and then our router shares that, but it can be your computer. But the cable modem sort of locks to one device. So if you're going to do this sort of extremely isolated speed test, you would connect directly to your cable modem. Most of the time, though, your router isn't the thing slowing you down. It might be, but it probably isn't. So you don't have to go through the power cycling of your cable modem. Connect an Ethernet cable to your main router. So in this case, your main eero, it's going to have 2 Ethernet ports on it. One is going to your cable modem. The other one is what you would plug into your Mac. It's smart enough to sort out which is which. And do a speed test that way. Turn off Wi-Fi on your Mac just to make sure that it's not, unintentionally using Wi-Fi as the connection. Because Wi-Fi can be slowed down for a variety of reasons. Connecting via a mesh satellite could be one of them. It depends on how things are in your house, how far apart they all are, all that stuff. It could also just be Wi-Fi interference in your house with either other devices you have or devices your neighbors have. But that would be the way to test. Is my router getting the speeds that my ISP says I should get? 12 up is correct for you, Andrew. So it's just down. And you should, if they say that you get 400, you should get either close to or maybe even a little bit over 400. They're probably... The package that you bought is probably 400 down, 10 up. You can see they give you a little bit more than 10. They often will give you a little bit more than that, 400. So do it with Ethernet, and you should be good to go. I don't know. What do you, and we have another question about sort of getting into the nuances of speed test next, but any thoughts for Andrew here before we get to that?
Yeah, I see this come up a lot in our our local next door system here. Mm-hmm. And I'm convinced the people that seem to have report problems, I think are the ones that are using Optimum's combined, it does Wi-Fi and it also is a router. I'm convinced that what they offer these days, it's a brand that I've actually never even heard of. I mean, when I bought mine, it's an Aris, but now they're offering something else.
Sure.
People that have ditched that and bought their own cable modem and then went to something like an eero, more often than not, people report that solved the problem, is that they got better Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So and yeah, if you're going to test speeds, do it over Ethernet, because you're almost certainly not going to see your full advertised speed on Wi-Fi, because that's just how the Wi-Fi works.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is generally speaking, so in my scenario here, with all of my mesh satellites, usually, again, things always are changing here, but when they're in sort of back to normal mode, all my mesh points are connected via Ethernet, which means that I shouldn't be experiencing any mesh-related like multi-hop delays where it's, I'm Wi-Fi to a satellite and then that satellite is Wi-Fi back to the main router or anything. So I shouldn't be experiencing any of that. Doesn't mean I don't. But in that scenario, with everything as perfect as it could possibly be and me very near a mesh point, I generally am seeing Wi-Fi based download speeds from the internet or from local resources at somewhere between 350 and maxing out somewhere about 500. That's pretty good. And I haven't heard of too many people getting better than that with Wi-Fi 5. With Wi-Fi 6, I can get fully up to a gigabit, no problem. And we're going to start talking about a lot more Wi-Fi 6 stuff, because I think it's finally at the point where we're all going to wind up with it next year in lots of different devices. We already have it in our iPhones 11, but I think, our routers and things like that, as we replace them, starting right now, but I think next year it's going to begin to hit critical mass for us, sort of almost accidentally, and that's a good thing. But yeah, that 350 to 500 is about the max of what I would get. Perfect world, usually I'm in the 150 to 200 range, just because I'm not sitting right next to an access point. I'm, somewhere else, because that's how Wi-Fi works. And there's walls and other RF emitting devices and all of that between us. So I agree with you, John. Yeah, of course, Ethernet that's the way to know, is your ISP delivering to your house. That now okay, the weak link in the chain is me. Great. What can I do to reposition things or whatever? Maybe even just changing channels, which your mesh system should be doing automatically. But that sort of troubleshooting would be the next step of that. So yeah, pretty good. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, when I was diagnosing my Wi-Fi stuff, iStumbler is always good to see what's in the neighborhood, to see if, there's a new kid on the block that is maybe traumatizing your Wi-Fi. The other thing is either Dabuki, or if you hold down Option and click on the little Wi-Fi link in your menu bar, it'll show you the negotiated rate if you want to see what you should be getting.
Okay.
Over Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That's another check.
Yep, for sure. I use two tools on my Mac to check Wi-Fi. One is, as you said, iStumbler. The other is one that's built or included with SetApp, and it is called Wi-Fi Explorer. And they both just present things in a different way. So if I'm looking for finding overlapping channels or finding congested channels, Wi-Fi Explorer tends to it just shows that in a way that's easier to see at a glance. Like when I was at my daughter's college apartment setting up her Wi-Fi, I set it up with I don't remember the model, but it's the Netgear combo DOCSIS 3.1 cable modem and 4x4 router all in one, like really strong thing. We just mentioned it a couple weeks ago. I'll put a link in the show notes once I figure out which model it is. But it's a great device. If you need a new cable modem and a router and you don't need mesh necessarily, although Netgear's Nighthawk mesh can link with this, this is a great thing because it's 4x4 tri-band, all great. So I set it up for her, and they have 300 down and 10 up from Xfinity. I was like, okay. Over Ethernet, I was getting 300 down and 10 up, or a little more than that. And then I connected my phone sitting in exactly the same spot where I was able to Ethernet connect my Mac, and I was getting like 110 down or something. It was like, crap. So I fired up, Wi-Fi Explorer and looked, and the channels, I mean, it's an apartment building. So any of you that live in an apartment know, really the best thing would be if all the residents nominated one person to be the apartment network manager and let that person set the channels and signal strength of everyone's radios in their, in routers, because that you could truly balance it out. Like I looked at it, I'm like, wow, 80% of the people here have everything on like channel 11 or something. It's like, and the same was true for the 5 gigahertz band. It's like everything's crowded up here. Like what's going on? And so I just moved some things around and found the channel that only had maybe one other radio on it. So this wasn't even about the strength of the competing radios. It was about the number of competing radios. And because in an apartment building, their strengths are sort of irrelevant. But it was the number of them. And that Wi-Fi Explorer really showed me easily, because it sort of shows them as a stack. And so it was like one channel had this, tall spire, and the other one was like a little shrub. And so I chose the shrub, and instantly it was like, okay, now I get 330 down everywhere in the apartment. It's like, perfect. You're good to go. and with, 6 of them living there, that's going to matter, especially with most of them being at least half of their classes being online and all that stuff. So, yeah. All right. Cable modem router. I'm just making a note to myself to go find that thing later. Let's go to listener John and dig into some more of these testing things and see what we come up with, because listener John says he's having some issues, and he says you were talking about upgrading your cable modem to DOCSIS 3.1 and all the benefits you would get with this, including getting rid of buffer bloat, especially with regards to uploads, which typically are capped at a much lower bandwidth than download speeds. I have Xfinity Blast, which is 200 down and 10 or 12 up. After your recommendations, I am in essentially the same boat now with a Deco M5 mesh system and the same service David had as well, but I upgraded from an Aris DOCSIS 3.0 telephony modem to, and I got rid of Xfinity's phone service and now use Google Voice and the ObiTalk device, which is great. Glad to hear it. He says, and I purchased a new Netgear CM1200 DOCSIS 3.1 modem. And after upgrading the modem, things seem to be working fine with no perceived difference. But he tried the DSL reports speed test, which supposedly measures buffer bloat, and doesn't really see a difference here. So your the thing you mentioned before about pinging www.apple.com is the way I test buffer bloat here. And by what we mean by buffer bloat is when it can happen on the downstream, but it's far more likely to happen on the upstream. If you have one device that is uploading lots of data or data over a period of time at the maximum rate that you can upload, then that fills up the buffer of the cable modem, and that then slows down any other traffic that needs to get out because it has to get in line behind this data that's just constantly filling the buffers. So things like checking email, which mostly is a data pulling down operation, but you have to send your requests and acknowledgments out, and the same with web pages and all of that. Those things, your outbound requests and acknowledgments get queued up, and that gives you an effective perceived slowdown. It's an actual slowdown. So the idea is to use a better queuing algorithm, and DOCSIS 3.1 introduces a better queuing algorithm. Some router manufacturers also offer better queuing algorithms that would step in the way of DOCSIS 3.1. But DOCSIS 3.1's queuing algorithm is much better. It's not perfect. There's nothing really perfect, but it is much better. And what I see when I start a ping test to www.apple.com, and what I'm looking at is the time that it takes, that it reports at the end of that ping. What a ping is it sends a signal to Apple, www.apple.com in this case, and then sends that back to me, right? So the time that's listed there is hopefully in milliseconds and not in seconds, right? But it's listed in milliseconds, so 1,000 of those is 1 second. And it should be, somewhere less than 100. Whatever normal is sort of up to a lot of different factors, but you should figure out what it looks like when things are normal. So get that ping going, watch it for 10, 15 seconds before you start doing anything. Great. Now you know what normal looks like. Now start a speed test, because a speed test operation from your web browser, from the command line, whatever, is going to soak up as much of your pipe as it possibly can, especially on the outbound. So do your speed test and watch what happens, especially watch what happens when the download test finishes and the upload test starts. That's where you're going to see what happens. And for me, I get about 1.5 seconds of high buffer when the big burst starts, and then it ratchets back down to something far more normal. That's the queuing algorithm in my cable modem doing its job. But it takes a second for it to catch it. The good news is that you still get to use all of your bandwidth. If you let your router do this, your router has to artificially limit the bandwidth that it sends out and in so that it's not sending more to the buffer than the buffer will allow. Because if you fill up the buffer, then you get whatever the buffer is going to do. In this case, what I just described. But with DOCSIS 3, it would just stay at, many orders of magnitude greater millisecond numbers, which is bad. But I get them for 1 second, maybe 2, and then things ratchet back down to normal. That's where you can see the queuing algorithm doing its job while you're still getting full bandwidth. So that's how I look at it. DSL Reports is a little less forgiving. They don't like to see any of that. And that's probably why you're getting the lower scores. I think it's an A through F score kind of thing on DSL Reports. That's probably why. But take a look at what you actually get, because that's the same data that DSL Reports is getting. They're just choosing to interpret it one way, which is not wrong or right. It's just their way of choosing to interpret it. They're consistent. But I look at it this way, and I don't mind, 1 second of going from, say, 30 millisecond turnaround to 400 millisecond turnaround, because after that, I'm back down to somewhere between, 60 and 80, and that's totally fine. Like, that's not going to be an issue at all. So that's where I find out. What do you think, John?
The last time I did the DSL reports, I got all A's.
Really? Oh, that's good. Well, because you're running eero with smart queuing management. So you're letting your eero do it before it ever gets to your cable modem. So you're never hitting that wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That's good. I like it. All right. Well, man, we got all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk about Ethernet versus Wi-Fi. We've got a bunch of IoT questions as they relate to our networks, including one from Mr. John F. Braun, I believe. So we got lots to go through, and I am eager to do that. Right now, what I am eager to do is tell you about our 3 sponsors, unless you've got something else to discuss, Mr. Braun.
Nope. Let's go.
All right. Our first sponsor for today is a sponsor with a cool stuff found of their own, and that is Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com with their OWC Thunderbolt 3 mini dock. We are big fans of Otherworld Computing here. John and I tend to go there first whenever we need something to extend or expand our Macs and various other devices. And we certainly are fans of their Thunderbolt 3 dock. In fact, I have one right in front of me, and I'm pretty sure John does too. Well, now they have their Thunderbolt 3 mini dock, which is a bus-powered multi-adapter, right? So that's the beauty of Thunderbolt 3 is it's got so much bandwidth and it's got such a pipe directly to the motherboard that you can add all kinds of things. And the OWC Thunderbolt 3 mini dock includes 2 HDMI ports, so dual 4K HDMI, dual USB, one USB 3, one USB 2, and gigabit Ethernet. And again, just to reiterate, it's bus powered. So this is great with your laptop because you can take it with you. You can plug it into an external monitor. You can use your USB drives, and you can connect to Ethernet. And as I said, it's all bus powered, so you don't have to worry about an extra power supply for the dock or anything like that. This is just one of the many things that OWC offers you. They craft these products perfectly because they know how this stuff works. They really are experts, and they're geeks like us, except they know their stuff even better than we do, which is how it's supposed to work. It's great. Go check it out. MacSales.com. We trust them. We highly recommend you check them out. MacSales.com. Our thanks to MacSales and Otherworld Computing for sponsoring this episode. Next up is PlushCare. You know, things are challenging enough these days. Seeing a doctor definitely doesn't need to be one of those challenging things. And that's why I've been really loving PlushCare. I've used it. My daughter's used it. PlushCare provides primary and urgent healthcare through virtual appointments. You can do them on your phone. You can do them on your computer. In fact, you do it all there. You schedule an appointment even for the same day, you do right there. And truly, like, they do have same day appointments. That's what I've used. You just pick a slot that works for you. You can see the doctor that you are picking. You pick a slot that works. And that way you're not wasting time on hold. You're certainly not sitting in a crowded waiting room or anything. And with your PlushCare membership, you can see your doctor right from the comfort of your own home. You can even be in your jammies if you want. They can diagnose you, of course. They can treat you. And as I've experienced, they can even write you prescriptions sent to your local pharmacy if you need. And it all happens within minutes. And if you have questions before or after your visit, you can send unlimited messages to your care team at any point in time. This is super handy. So you kind of get something going, and then I find myself, I'm sure you are the same, find myself with questions, boom, off it goes. They really do a great job, again, at just being able to get an appointment so quickly, even on the weekends. I've been able to, see plenty of appointments available, same day, next day kind of thing, no problem. And then you just talk. And we all know how to use our phones to talk. We're good at that now. So it's really great. PlushCare makes it easy for me to get the excellent care I need when I need it, and they can do the same for you. And you can start your membership today. Go to plushcare.com/MGG to start your free 30-day trial. That's plushcare.com/MGG for a free 30-day trial. Plushcare.com/MGG. Our thanks to PlushCare for sponsoring this episode. We talk a lot about cell phones and mobile phone providers and service and all of that here. And one of the things we used to talk a lot about is those huge monthly bills that we didn't like. Well, then we learned, didn't we? We've learned about Mint Mobile, because with Mint Mobile, we can cut our wireless bills down to just $15 a month, saving hundreds of dollars. And Mint Mobile, of course, is our next sponsor here. If you're looking to save without sacrificing your service, switching to Mint Mobile is a no-brainer. They moved everything online. They just created a new model is really what they did. So you're not paying for retail stores that, quite frankly, right now we wouldn't be going into anyway. But Mint Mobile's been doing this for years. So it's just part of their foundation. It's how they work. Everything's online. Everything, all those savings are just passed along to you. So this is what they do. They knew that most of us were paying for way more data than we were actually using. In fact, a lot of us were paying for quote unquote unlimited data, but we all really know that there were some limits in there. And most of us were comfortable calling it unlimited because we were never hitting those limits. Well, guess what? We were paying for those limits. So why not just pay for the data that you use? And this is what Mint Mobile does. So every plan comes with unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus crazy fast 4G LTE. And if you go to their website, you'll see they're even on the 5G train, which is awesome. You can bring your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with your existing contacts. They support Apple's visual voicemail, like they're iPhone people over there, so they get it. And if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with their 7-day money-back guarantee. So to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/MGG. That's mintmobile.com/MGG. Again, cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/MGG. Our thanks to Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode. All right, John, let's go to Allison here. And Allison asks a generic question and then a specific example to explain why I'm asking. In System Preferences Network, you can set the priority of your network interfaces. If you prioritize Ethernet above Wi-Fi, what does this actually do? Wi-Fi still works, so what has changed? My specific problem that prompts the question, she asked. And this is Allison from Nosilicast at podfeet.com. So she's actually using a similar setup to us, except she's got two computers in the same house run by two different people. She says, with Mimo Live, when broadcasting my live show, as you guys do now, I have to turn Wi-Fi completely off or my video and audio wind up getting out of sync. Steve is the producer on his iMac in another room. And she says, I'm using Mimo Live to send my video and audio of my screen and my voice to him. I really want/need Wi-Fi on because I use a 12.9-inch iPad Pro as an auxiliary screen using Sidecar. Of course, that requires Wi-Fi. It would seem that Mimo Live should use Ethernet for its work and let Sidecar use Wi-Fi without interference. I've tested our setup without running Sidecar, but Wi-Fi on, and the sync problem still exists. So it's definitely Wi-Fi, not Sidecar. Hence my question about what does prioritizing Ethernet do if it doesn't solve this problem? Okay, so it's a great question. When you reprioritize things, all the network interfaces are still active and alive. What it does is it sets which one gets the default gateway, meaning which one are packets sent to when they are meant to go over the internet. What happens locally on your network isn't quite as controllable. And so you will get some of your local network connections. I've seen them bouncing between Wi-Fi and Ethernet at times. Like I'll see packets and then it like jumps. So my guess is that this is exactly what you're running into here. And then because you're doing audio and video live, any little hiccup can cause a sync issue. I suppose it's possible. I don't know how Mimo Live does its thing, but it's possible Mimo Live sets up two streams and one winds up going over Wi-Fi and the other one winds up going over video. I don't know this. I'm just speculating, but that would certainly explain an out of sync scenario here. So there's a couple ways you could solve this. Number one, you could manually so I'm going with the most complex to the least complex. It's just how my brain works. In fact, I didn't even think of the least complex one until about 10 seconds ago. But you can manually set the subnet mask of your Wi-Fi so that it excludes Steve's IP address. Right? I mean, that's the subnet mask essentially tells your computer if something is available without going through the gateway or with going through the gateway. That's what the subnet mask tells your computer. And so if you say, in order to connect to Steve's computer, you must go through the gateway, and we've decided that the gateway is the Ethernet interface, all traffic will be routed up there. And then, of course, the Ethernet interface will say, no, I don't need the gateway. I got you. And it'll just talk to Steve. So that's one way of doing this. A better way of solving it, both simpler and less likely to cause problems, is to leave Wi-Fi turned on, but disconnect from your Wi-Fi network. Because Sidecar just needs Wi-Fi enabled. It does not need Wi-Fi to be associated with an access point. I'm pretty sure of this, because I've done this before where there's no Wi-Fi and yet my devices are able to Sidecar up, no problem. I think it uses Bluetooth to find them and then Wi-Fi in an ad hoc way to associate. So I think that might be the better way. And then really you probably never, I don't know how often you move your MacBook Pro around. Maybe there are times when you need the Wi-Fi to associate with your actual network. But my advice would be turn off the auto join, uncheck that new checkbox there in Catalina on your network so that it's not constantly rejoining that network and you have to remember to go to the Wi-Fi menu. I think we can go to the Wi-Fi menu and say detach from disk. Yeah, if you option click the Wi-Fi menu, you will get disconnect from network name, and then it will disconnect from that network, but Wi-Fi is still on. So I think that's the answer, John. What do you think, man?
Oh, look at that. Okay.
I don't know. It's right. I mean, any other ideas?
I'll buy it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Reminds me, what was that line from? I'll buy that for $1. And what was who said that?
I think it was in RoboCop, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The guy on TV. I'd buy that for $1.
That's right. Yes. Exactly. Mr. John F. Braun, you always have the pop culture.
No, I have, I remember, so this machine, I've never had to get to the level that you had, but I remember this machine that I'm on here, I had to turn on Wi-Fi to enable location, in order for it to find the location.
Okay.
Of my computer.
Right.
Wi-Fi has to be, you told me this, but
right.
Yeah, so you've definitely dug into this more because I'm like, well, why doesn't it know the location? I mean, it should be able to geocode it off the IP address. And it's like, it's not really how it works.
It's not how they choose to make it work. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. But once I turned on Wi-Fi, it showed me on the map where my Mini is.
Right.
Which was cool.
Yeah. Or creepy or both. There's a lot of things.
Well, I wanted to know.
Right. Well, that's it's all about perspective, isn't it? So, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Louis, I believe this is Louis. Yes. Louis from Montreal has a question. He says, my wife and I are planning to build a new house in the near future, and I'm already planning the home network. Attaboy. He says, here's my plan. Number one, I'm planning to use mesh Wi-Fi, which I'm thinking of wiring to ensure reliability with the backhaul. Yes. Number two, I'll have a server closet where I'll have the main mesh module and all the different IoT hubs, Lutron, SmartThings, etc., which require wired connections. Great. Number three, the closet will have the main Ethernet switch. Great. Number four, I'm planning to wire the whole house. Opened walls, might as well, right? Yep. Number five, I'm planning to install a few smaller switches in specific areas to minimize the cable runs to the main Ethernet switch. Okay. And number six, I'll have a few cameras for security. Are there any problems with this? Is there a problem to have satellite switches in particular? Anything I should be aware of? I'm leaning towards wired security cameras. Is this overkill as opposed to wireless? Any general advice? Okay. So I have some thoughts about this, John. You might too. Satellite switches. I do this certainly. If you can avoid it, and there's a big asterisk there. If you can avoid it, it is better not to have satellite switches. That said, there's usually a huge cost involved in avoiding it. Running all those wires everywhere in your house and preemptively predicting how many drops you'll need in every single room, or going overkill and running like 10 Ethernet drops to every room. That's going to be crazy. Like that would solve the problem, but it's overkill. Also, switches, start to get almost exponentially more expensive as the number of ports on a given switch grows. So it's very likely less expensive to buy 3 8-port gigabit switches than it is 1 24-port, because the backplane of that switch only needs to do 8, whereas the backplane of a 24-port switch needs to do, 24 gigs or 48 gigs of data, and that's a lot of data to be moving around, and you need faster CPUs and more heat issues and all of that stuff. So again, if you just have all this hardware and the wires are already there, great, avoid satellite switches. Otherwise, it's our freaking houses. Like, we don't need the most pristine, efficient network, even though we want that. That said, though, I would make sure to use Cat 7 in your walls so that you can leverage 10G Ethernet to your satellite switches if you ever decide you want that kind of backplane or backbone to your house. The idea would be all your devices would connect to your switches at single gig, regular gigabit Ethernet, but your switches could connect to each other at 10 gig Ethernet to give you the ability to have more than one device speaking at full speed across the satellite link, if you would. So that would be my thought on that. What do you think about that, John? We'll get to the security camera question in a minute and any other stuff, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, as far as how you want to architect it.
Yeah.
As far as having satellite switches, the only thing I looked up here, you want to keep this in mind, is that rather than doing a single run, the thing is every Ethernet cable has a recommended distance. And so I just quickly searched this in Google, and this sounds right. But Cat 7 is only effective up to about 50 feet.
Oh, I thought Cat 7 did 100 meters of 10 gig.
Oh, let's see. Okay, no, another thing. Okay, maximum length of Cat 7 is 100 meters, which is what, about 300 feet?
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, meter is about 3 feet. Okay. No, that should be, depending on how big your house is, I guess, keep in mind that
sure
there is a maximum distance that any network cable can run.
I've run.
But yeah, 300 feet.
Cables.
That's, that'd be fine for me.
It's fine. Yeah.
When designing your network, though, just.
No, it's smart because you're right. In a house, you're not always going straight from point A to point B when you're running cable. You might wind up taking a circuitous path of, least resistance, if you will. So yeah, no, that's a good thing to bear in mind. And
yeah, the other thing is you may have cable running. You may be able to utilize cable and do Mocha. If you already have existing, I'm just saying, if you have it.
Yes. Absolutely. I have, that's what I'm doing in order to get, high speed cable to my living room, pre-pandemic, when I got, when the idea of having other humans in my home started to be a whole lot less interesting to me. I had basically decided this summer I was just going to call an electrician and have them run an Ethernet cable to my living room, because I'm getting sick and tired of it's only maybe once every 3 weeks the Mocha connection gets a little bit mungy, and so I need to go and restart both of the devices, the Mocha adapters on either end. And then things are fine for a very long time, several weeks. And then it's like, I'm not all that happy anymore. And I don't know if interference builds up or what it is, but it is a modem, right? So it's modulating from digital to analog, and noise gets weird. And, there's other things talking on my coax in my house. So like Mocha is a fantastic solution, but it is not perfect. And after years of fighting with it, fighting is really the wrong word, but when it sucks is when it's time to go watch something, like the day is done. I want to, watch some stupid show for an hour or whatever before I go to sleep. We sit down as a family together, we press play, and it's like, why is it pixelated? And it's like, crap. Okay, hang on. And I get up, and it takes all of about 3 minutes to reset these things. But that's not the moment of the day when I want to reset those things. So I figured pay an electrician $150, solve the problem. So you've got your walls open. You don't have to pay the $150. It's essentially zero cost delta on this, run the Ethernet. But yes, you're totally right. In an existing home, Mocha is a fantastic solution. So as far as his security cameras, John, my thought is, you're probably fine with wireless stuff, and it's so much more convenient, especially how the new ones, and especially Eufy with their battery life, where it's like the batteries in those things last, they say a year, even if it's only half that. Having to charge a camera battery, twice a year at worst is not a terrible thing. So it gives you some freedom in terms of placement, a lot of freedom in terms of placement, both indoors and out. Whereas if you're wiring things, yes, you can run power over Ethernet. So then you'd have to think about getting PoE switches or PoE injectors. But then you could just run one cable, so you're not having to run two. And most wired cameras do support power over Ethernet, but not all of them. So it's worth thinking. But I would go wireless. I mean, the other issue with wireless is, how much are they soaking up your bandwidth, your Wi-Fi bandwidth, and are they streaming 100% of the time, or are they only streaming when there's activity? And I'll tell you, if the camera's battery life lasts, 6 to 12 months, they are not streaming all the time. They are only streaming when there's activity. So, because otherwise they'd burn those batteries out in about a day. So, I think you're fine. So, thoughts, John, on the cameras or anything else?
No, I got the Eufy wired batteryless, and I don't think it's constantly streaming. I think only when an event
right
occurs will it start.
Cool. And I hear that both. Well, I'm perhaps jumping the gun, but we were talking about Hoobs or Homebridge last week. I hear the new Ring plugins for Hoobs and Homebridge will link our Ring cameras to our home app, which is really kind of nice because the Ring app is super slow, man. Like, have you ever tried, like, you get, there's, motion in the driveway, and you press the thing and it's like, okay, well, wait 5 minutes or so, and then I'll show you your motion in the driveway. It's like, I want to see it now. Otherwise, I'm going to get up and look in the driveway. I'm jumping the gun, John, because I can't help myself. There is a cool stuff found, and we might not even get to a cool stuff found segment this week, but I want to share this. And it is something called Rapid Ring. And Rapid Ring is a third-party app. It is a free app, and it gets the picture up from your Ring doorbells nearly instantly. And not just doorbells, but, Ring cameras in general. I've totally moved to it. We got it just a couple days ago, and Cool Stuff Found listener John sent it in. Thank you, John. And I still have the Ring app on my phone, but I turned off all of its notifications. I turned on Rapid Rings, and I'm just using Rapid Ring for now. But as soon as I get my Hoob setup going, which should be hopefully in the next week here, then I might wind up just moving to that and having it all inside HomeKit. So anyway, pretty good. Have you checked out Rapid Ring, John? Did you jump on that when it came in?
I'm not currently using a Ring device.
Oh, that's right. You moved to the Eufy doorbell. I forgot about that. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't. And yeah.
That's right.
Maybe I could install it on the back door. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I already got a camera on the
right.
pointing at my yard. So yeah, it's maybe I'll arrive at someday.
Cool.
If I add another door or something. I don't know.
Cool. All right, we've got a couple of comments about Louis' network here. And Mac Vader says, we can easily replace Ethernet cables without opening the walls. Put pipes in the walls during building your house. Oh, this is good advice. That way you can put new cables in at any time. Yeah, so running, pipes or conduit or whatever, so that you've got way to run. And then, of course, any electrician that does this would know, but it's also good for you to know, run string in those so that you have something to pull a new cable through. I mean, you can use the existing cable to pull a new cable through, but string is better because that way you're not messing with your existing stuff. So, yeah, no, that's really smart, Mac Vader. Yeah, that's good. And Big and VA in the chat room supports that. He says, I had conduit and boxes put in our house when built 21 years ago and have used 4 of them so far. You know what? That's actually pretty good. So there you go. I wish I had conduit in my walls. I wish I'd thought about a lot of this stuff when we moved in and did construction on the house. But all right, moving on to Torsten, which I will find here, who asks, I've spent days searching for this, and I'm hoping you can put me in the right direction. My network is Verizon Fios, I presume, to a Synology RT2600AC as my router, the via Ethernet, and a TP-Link AV2000 from the basement to the second floor, a Cisco switch, and other devices like a Synology disk station, MacBook Pro, iPad via Ethernet. This has worked for a long time. Because of bad reception, I now wanted to add another router, a Netgear MR1100 or an Action Tech, by adding it to the Cisco switch via Ethernet and turning on the offload via Ethernet function. When I did this, the following issues appeared. The Wi-Fi network suddenly was very slow, and the Netgear shows an IP conflict error message and is asking for a unique subnet. I tried to play with different subnet masks on both the Synology router and the Netgear router that's being used as an access point without success. Any ideas on how to use this Netgear router as an extender to the network without causing these issues? Yeah. So you're building a Quasi-Mesh. So this is like rewinding, 5 or 6 years before eero and all of the sort of actual mesh, consumer mesh products started to appear. And what you want to make sure, this is how we always used to do it, right? Because it was the only way. You only want one of your routers in router mode, and that will be your Synology router because that's the one connected to your internet connection. From there, any other routers that you have, you want to set in bridge mode or dumb mode or not router mode. Access point mode is what some of them call it. In fact, I think Netgear calls it access point mode. You want to turn off all of its routing features. It's probably, by happenstance, it is probably creating its own subnet that is exactly the same subnet as the upstream subnet from the Synology. And that's probably why A, you're getting these errors, and B, you're getting these slowdowns because these are non-routable subnets, and yet you've got duplicated things that can see each other. It's a mess. You don't want that. You want everything on one subnet. You don't want multiple routers. Turn off the routing functions, and that should solve that problem for you. Thoughts on that, Mr. Braun?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. Moving on, time to start getting into some. I guess we got one more on mesh here before we move on to some of the HomeKit stuff or smart home stuff. Matt says, I seem to recall that Dave was at one point going to review and discuss the Ubiquiti Dream Machine. I think I remember you saying that you had a demo sent to you, and so I want to know about that. Here's why I ask. I currently have a first-gen eero system with 1 puck serving as my router and 3 more serving as mesh points around the house. 2 of them have wired backhaul. 1 is fully wireless. So 4 eeros, 1 router, 2 wired, 1 wireless. Got it. The system has served me well, but lately has become unstable. The node serving as my router reboots at inopportune times, like when I'm on a Teams or WebEx meeting. A couple of the other mesh points exhibit odd behaviors sometimes as well. Wireless devices suddenly start having a hard time connecting, though the nearby mesh point claims to be up and running. A power cycle fixes it. This annoys my family. And Dave, as you know, family acceptance is key. When the family is unhappy, I hear about it. Yes, exactly. He says, so I was thinking of replacing the current setup with a UniFi system. Here are my challenges. Although I've read some online reviews, I want yours. And I find the UniFi product line a bit confusing. Ubiquiti must be in cahoots with Synology on the strategy of trying to make as many products as possible so no one knows which one to pick. Yeah, fair. So yes, I tested the Dream Machine for sure. I currently have it sitting in my office as my backup if and when my Synology router dies. I think if I hadn't already standardized and sort of gotten my life, founded on having this Synology router in place or I just didn't have time to move, the Ubiquiti Dream Machine would be a great thing to go with. It's a fantastic router. I had no problems with it. And, one of the best parts about it is that it's part of the UniFi line, as you mentioned. And the UniFi line has lots of different options, which you also mentioned. There are only a few that really apply to those of us here at home, though. And they've got some outdoor capable units, which is huge. But the mesh points that I've used are the Nano HD mesh points, and those are a good option for sort of general use indoor mesh. And now they've got their U6 Lite US and U6 LR US as their Wi-Fi 6 replacements for those. So, this is a very interesting thing to me, and I may wind up kind of moving my foundational router over to this because of that. So I like that Dream Machine. Yeah, that's a good thing. As for troubleshooting your eeros, it sounds like maybe the one acting as your router is malfunctioning. With eero, one cool part about it is all the devices because they all connect back to the eero home base, right? They are cloud managed. Any of them can become your router without you having to reconfigure things. Just take the one that's your router out, take another one, plug it in at that point, and it will figure out that it's the router, and it should just relay everything out. And then you could try that other access point somewhere else. It might be that its Ethernet port is flaky, right? And so make that one your wireless one and forget about it. Or it might just need a factory reset. And all of this can sort of be done. So that would be my troubleshooting advice on that is put a different one in as your router and let's see what happens. And again, I don't know how Fios does it because I have no personal experience with Fios, but there may be some, like if it's a cable modem, you would have to do what we talked about earlier in the show, which is, power cycling the cable modem so that it accepts the new hardware device eero as its router. You might have to do something similar or even call Verizon tech support if they lock things into a specific MAC address. But otherwise, yeah, good. Thoughts on that, John?
My eeros, for the most part, I don't know. I don't know within the last several weeks, I've had 2 different satellite units.
Okay.
Show up with a red light.
Yep.
Cycling power seems to fix it. The thing is,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why just one of them goes red. I mean, I've had them all go red, and that's when we have an outage.
Sure.
We've had.
Right.
And yeah. All this stuff
of course
starts screaming. But every now and then, yeah, just one of them will go red, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Huh.
And it's getting old. I don't know if it's wearing out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It looks like those UniFi, what was I going to say? Wi-Fi 6 devices are only available to early access things. I searched and found them on Reddit, but if you go to UniFi site, it says that it's available only for early access users. So you could sign up as an early access user, I suppose, and then potentially, be able to get them. So just so you know. All right. I don't know. What else we got here, John? Let's see. Is it time? It's time to move into the HomeKit realm or the home smart home realm. Yeah, right. We're good. We're good with this one, my friend.
Yes.
Okay. Then let's go to Todd, and we'll start with a tip. He says, I don't know how I missed this for so long, but I just discovered right-clicking on a tab in. Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong tip. There's 2 tips in the email. We've shared one already. He says, I got a little carried away with letting HomeKit security settings and inadvertently broke my connection to my Ecobees and Wemos. I believe it was my eero app that asked if I wanted added security or something like that via HomeKit. Yes, HomeKit, capable router is the key. He says, I clicked OK and I got caught. The next day, I went to change my thermostat temp via the Ecobee iPhone app, and it said both of my Ecobees were offline. But my eeros showed them both happily connected to our Wi-Fi network. I suspected HomeKit, so after much digging around in the HomeKit iPhone app, I went under the home icon, and in the upper left of the screen, down to network, Wi-Fi network and routers. Under accessories, I tapped on the Ecobee thermostat. The resulting image is titled Network Security. Automatic was selected. I changed that to no restriction, and voila, the Ecobee app could see the two Ecobees again. I went back into HomeKit, changed the network security for the Ecobee back to automatic, and the Ecobees showed offline. For obvious reasons, I am leaving the HomeKit network security for the Ecobee to no restriction. He said, similarly, the Wemo app showed the same thing. So I went in and did this. So it's interesting that those two devices, which I would say are pretty popular smart home devices, are not properly in the HomeKit router database to allow them through. But clearly, for whatever reason in your setup, they aren't. So that's a great little tip to make sure that you go into the Home app if you've turned on HomeKit Router Security, because HomeKit was telling your router, don't let those devices talk. And you wanted to let them talk. So that's good that that's actually configurable, that you can do it on a per device or at least per vendor basis. So I like that. That's good. All right. Good. Yeah, John?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. On to, and I believe this is Louis, not Louis, but I could be wrong about these things. No, it's actually the same Louis in Montreal. He says, I have a bunch of IoT hubs like SmartThings, Lutron, etc., and I'm wondering about their ranges. I always thought that once the hub is connected to my network, my mesh network will provide coverage throughout my house. The hub is not solely responsible for talking to its minions, or is it? He says, if it is, it means I could have a mini server room in my basement with all my hubs, and my mesh network would talk to all the different IoT components. So the reality, it's a great question. The reality is the answer depends. For your Z-Wave and other devices like your Philips Hue bulbs and things like that, it is your Wi-Fi, your smart home hub that talks directly to those devices. So SmartThings, Philips Hue Hub, Lutron, I think, but that one might depend. But certainly SmartThings and Philips Hue, they connect to your network via Ethernet or a Wi-Fi dongle if you go that route. And then they talk to the bulbs or devices or whatever they are. However, all of these protocols are also mesh protocols. So it's important to separate this from your Wi-Fi network, which might or might not be a mesh, and then your smart home network, which is also a mesh, meaning that you really only need to have, say, one bulb within good range of your, Philips Hue Hub or your SmartThings Hub. And then that bulb will relay the signal to the next bulb and so on and so forth. This is all very low bandwidth stuff. Telling a bulb turn on or turn off is truly very, very small bits of data. So even if it gets super slowed down by passing around your house like that, as long as the connection can be made, the signals will make it. And sure enough, I've got Philips Hue bulbs here. My hub is way over in the house. I've got one outside in the driveway on the office side of things. And because there's also one at the lamp post in the middle of the driveway, it just relays it across, and rarely do I have a connection problem to it, if ever. So the answer is it depends. And I'm assuming you found the same thing with your stuff, right, John?
I can't see it happening, but I believe you.
That's fair. I believe me too. You're right. I could be totally wrong about this and have no way of confirming.
But no, I think you're right. It is. It's also a mesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it speaks, at least SmartThings for the most part speaks Z-Wave, and there's another protocol called Zigbee.
Right.
So those are the two main languages that SmartThings talks, and that's, I think, pretty much all you need or those are the two major standards from what I've seen. For smart home stuff. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I think you're right, and I know I'm going to get this wrong, and somebody will yell at me, and that's okay. But I think Philips Hue is like, is one of those. I want to say that it's Z-Wave, but I could be totally wrong about that. But it is one of those, but it's like their own somewhat customized version of one of those. So yeah, I don't know. Craziness. All right, John, you've been running into an issue with one or maybe more of your smart home devices. You want to tell me what the issue is? Tell us what the issue is?
Yeah. So, like you, Dave, I have a whole bunch of things that, are sitting around not being used. Well, I finally saw these smart bulbs that I bought a while ago, a Tomy color smart bulb.
Okay.
And I got a 2-pack and I was like, yeah, and it was a good price too. I think it was like under $30 for 2 bulbs and their color.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, well, let me, but they advertise. But these are not Z-Wave bulbs. So all of my other bulbs, I think most of the other ones I got in the house are Cree, which, and they're Z-Wave.
Yeah.
So they talk to my smart things. But these are different, and they specifically advertise, hey, we're Wi-Fi bulbs.
Much better.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's different. I don't know if it's better. Well, in this case, it's not better.
You're going to disagree with me on this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, because I wasn't able to add it. So I ran their program, which I already have 2 of their air conditioner controllers. So I have the app, but the app, you also run to add bulbs. And it's like, well, what do you want to add? And I'm like, well, I want to add a bulb. Okay. So, ran their software, put the bulb in learn mode, which for most bulbs involves, or discovery mode, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
So this specific one, you have to turn the power on for 3 seconds, off for 3 seconds, and repeat that 3 times. Then the bulb will start flashing, saying, hey, I'm in discovery mode. Yep. It's like, okay, cool.
Yep.
Then I, proceeded to run their app, and it's like, whoa, make sure you're talking to 2.4 gigahertz and not 5. And they even have, a smiley face next to 2.4 and a frowny face next to 5. And I'm like, okay, well, my eero is 2.4 and 5, right?
Right.
But it doesn't work.
Yeah. So we've seen this. And we've talked about it on the show. We've seen this with lots of mesh systems. Certainly eero is one of them, but famously we went through this with Orbi and also Velop. But I mean, they all are susceptible to this. It really isn't the mesh system, except I'll put an asterisk on that because they could help us solve this. The issue is the way the smart home device vendor, in this case, Atomi, has chosen to make their bulb or device association path work. What they could do, and what we presume that they're doing, and why none of this makes sense to us the first time we see it, is just like what you said. Like, well, yeah, I've got both 2.4 and 5. Here's the Wi-Fi name. Go join. Many smart home devices do exactly that. And even though your phone is talking to the 5 gigahertz version of that Wi-Fi band, and your a 2.4 device cannot see the 5 gigahertz version, right? Because it doesn't speak that frequency. So it's only going to see the 2.4. It says, got it. I'm going to connect to John's network, the SSID named John's network. I know that's not your network name, but whatever, and it, whatever password credentials you gave me, great. I'm going to connect and I'm good to go because I know the name of the network and I know the password. Awesome. And for the smart home devices that do that, everything works fine. Some of them don't do that. They look at your phone and they ask your phone, what is the MAC address of the Wi-Fi access point to which you are currently connected? Right. And the MAC address of the Wi-Fi device is unique to each radio. So if your phone is connected to a 5 gigahertz device, then your IoT device that doesn't have a 5 gigahertz radio and really shouldn't have a 5 gigahertz radio, it's low bandwidth stuff. It is you want it to be 2.4 so that it gets the benefits of 2.4 gigahertz range, all of that, right? So this is the problem. And the bigger part of the problem is that your mesh vendor, eero, and as most of them, don't let you split 2.4 from 5. And so you only have a few ways of doing this. One way would be to walk far away from your access point and set up your bulb from there, hoping that your phone has chosen to choose. Sure, I'll go with it. The 2.4 gigahertz network instead of the 5 gigahertz network, right? And then you're going to be fine. But that's rarely going to happen. So it's a huge source of frustration. Some Wi-Fi vendors, some mesh vendors will allow you to set the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, radios differently from each other. But quite frankly, most of them will not. And so you're going to run into this problem. I can help you, John, because I am an eero Pro installer. And what that means is I've registered with Eero's consultant program. I actually could sell Eero's, although I've never done that. I've just used it for helping my clients. You know, I have a few Dave the Nerd clients that have Eero's, and it allows me to remotely manage their networks without knowing their username and password. They give me permission as a pro installer to the network, and I can manage things. And I have a couple of different features that we, as people that have Eero's in our homes, don't have in our apps. And one of those features is temporarily disable 5 gigahertz network. So if you give me, as pro installer, access to your network, I can go in and turn off the 5 gigahertz for you. You go and do your thing. And then you turn, then we turn that back on and everything's fine because your smart home device, your bulbs, will only connect to the 2.4 because that's all they know. And then everything else will be back to connecting to 5. So that's the way to solve this problem. I wish Eero would add this to their app so that all of us, regardless of whether we're pro installers or not, had access to it. Because what's weird is I can't be a pro installer for my own Eero network for whatever reason. I think it's because the email addresses are tied or whatever. So I can't do this on my own Eero network, at least not without jumping through some hoops. At least I haven't figured out how, but I certainly could do it for yours. So we could solve that problem. And anybody else out there, you have to be you have to have a business and be able to show that you actually do this and consult and all that stuff. But the process isn't terrible. And I highly recommend, if you are doing any sort of support, to become a pro Eero installer. So I'll put a link to the Eero Pro website so that either you can become one or you can find one. I think they do referrals and things like that too. So anyway, I put that out there, but that's the issue. And like I said, each mesh system either deals with this differently or doesn't. There are many where you simply can't control it. There are a few where you can go in and either turn off the radio like this or rename the networks and split them. But once you bifurcate them, it gets a little weird because even once you set it back, like there is some part of the network name that's important to the negotiation. So I think when the network name changes, even though it's connecting by MAC address, it's not going to get you there. So there you go.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
I have 2 other things that I'm trying.
Okay.
And they're both TP-Link. Surprise. So one, I still have a TP-Link extender, Dave.
Yeah.
And you can set it up with both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz SSIDs.
Separately.
So that may be one way.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from connecting another router to broadcast just 2.4 on a different band, and you could even like hide that SSID if you want and just use that for your IoT devices. That's true. Yep.
Yeah. No, I hit a roadblock with that though, because when I added my extender to my network with its existing settings, the Fing box was like, whoa, who's this?
Yeah.
And they were like, do you want to let this in? So it detected that somebody was trying to glom onto my my Wi-Fi, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I noticed that. The other thing is that I still have my Archer C9 access point.
Okay.
Which also lets me set both a 5 gigahertz and a 2.4 gigahertz.
Right. Of course. Yeah, of course.
So what I may do, so that's the path I'm trying to take right now, though it won't go, this model doesn't have a bridge mode, which is annoying to me.
Yep.
So it's getting an IP address and a different subnet. And I think that's causing problems. So I gotta do a bit more work, but I think that's going to be the solution, is setting up a special, SSID just for the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks for clearing that up. Okay. So it's because the setup does exactly what you say, is that it takes whatever you're connected to on the phone and it tries to connect to that, but it's kind of dumb about it. It could be like, well, let me connect to the 2.4 version of this SSID. But
if it just connected via SSID, it would be fine. And it's not. There's got to be some, code library out there that all these IoT vendors are just like lazily baking into their apps. Like, oh, that'll take care of the association for me. Great. Done. Check the box, move on, and they really like it's a big enough problem that the mesh vendors all should have a way of dealing with this, because it comes up all the time. They, some of them don't at all. Some of them do at a very elegant way. And then you get like the eeros in the middle where it's like, okay, well, and you know what? My guess is you don't need a pro eero installer to help you with this. You could call eero because, of course, their support techs are, have the same access or more, right? I would assume, and just say, hey, I'm having this problem. Can you turn off my 5 gigahertz network for 20 minutes? And my guess is they would be like, yeah, sure, no problem. So honestly, that's a better solution, unless you want me to be managing your network, in which case, I'm all in. But
now, here's another thing. Actually, I didn't mention this, but this is a good suggestion from our friend Blattboy in our chat room.
Yes.
And this is actually another route that I was taking, or I was thinking of taking. So he says, I keep my IoT devices on a guest network, maybe limiting that network. And the thing is, now that I think about it, the Archer guest network setup had a checkbox that caught my attention, and it has said, allow guests to see the rest of the network. I think if I use the guest network but because it's getting a 192 address instead of a 172, which is what the rest of my network is on, I think if I put the bulbs on a special guest network SSID and check that box that says, let it see everybody else, that may do it for me as well.
No, because that's not what that box does. Is it either allows it by default with it off, it means the only thing devices connected to the guest network can do are connect to the internet. That's it. So if I came to your house and I connected to your guest network and then said, hey man, I want to print to your printer, I wouldn't be able to see your network printer because I'm not allowed to see other local devices. That's sort of the point of the guest network, is it silos it in a VLAN sort of way. It does not change. I would still see, and you would too, if you turned on your guest network, I'm sure you would see both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz versions of your guest network being broadcast. So yeah, that would be the issue there is that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for the,
yeah, man. Yeah.
Thanks for the analysis. So now I have a better idea of which, direction I want to take. Yeah,
I think calling eero customer support would probably solve this for you within about 5 minutes, because they could just turn it off. You get it set up and then turn it back on, and life is good. You're back to being Joe Walsh. Life is good so far and also afterwards. So there you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, I had promised that we were going to get to some NAS stuff today, John, with disk stations and all of that, but quite obviously, that's going to have to wait, my friend. I am glad that we snuck a cool stuff found in, so at least there was that. But yeah, no, we had too much network fun. That's what I think I'm going to have to change the title of the episode to Too Much Network Fun, because I built a nice little image for this week's episode, and just like I did last week, I got to learn to stop building these things before the shows, because I get caught, John, is what happens, and that's
one never knows. Do one.
What's that?
One never knows. Do one.
Do one. I like that. Wouldn't it be does one? I don't know. Is that yet another pop culture reference I'm missing?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I do want to take a minute, though, and thank all of our premium subscribers whose contributions have come in as of late. You can learn more about Mac Geek Gab Premium at macgeekgab.com/premium. It is our way of answering the call that many of you had who wanted to and are able to support us directly. Obviously, simply listening to the show is the best thing that you can do. Telling other people about it, sending in your questions, your tips, your cool stuff found, that's awesome. Helping out our sponsors is, one way of sort of giving us indirect financial support, because when you visit them, if you never visit our sponsors, it's very rare that the chance would come up for you to buy something from them. We only ask that you visit them, and then if they've got something for you, then great, but that's between you and them. So that's one way of indirect financial support. And then, of course, there's the direct way, which is premium payments. It is optional. You are just as welcome a listener. But we do answer our premium questions that come in first. So, you do this extra thing for us. We do this extra thing for you. The secret is that we really do try to get to all the questions that come in, but we do prioritize the premium stuff. So I want to send out my thanks to those of you that have sent in contributions, either manually or automatically recently. Patrick from Shreveport, Jonathan from, I'm not sure where, Martine, Kirshen, Michael from Bristol, Stephen from Plainfield, Fernando from Cincinnati, Robert from Columbiana, Walter from Kansas City, Stuart, Barry from probably traveling somewhere, Michael from Spencer, be safe, my friends, Joseph from Marietta, John from Enrico, James from Melville, Wesson from I don't know where. These people from I don't know where, actually, they've been part of the premium program for so long that we don't have your addresses on file, which is fine. It's just, acknowledging it. Alan from Montgomery, Mark from Centennial, Jeff from Chesterton, David from Plainsboro, Frank from Tunbridge, William, Russell from Jeffersonton. Oh, that's a mouthful. Ralph from Great Falls, Clive from Burgess Hill, Scott from Bourbonnais, David from Mount Prospect, Matthew from Forked River, Matthias from Reinach, Dave from Saugerties, Michael from Robbins, Ken from Honolulu, Drew from San Diego, Dimitri from Moscow, John from Wake Forest, Chris from Chorleywood, Santiago from Palm City, Thomas from Sacramento, and Jim from San Jose. Oh, and Michael from Milwaukee. Thanks so much to all of you for your recent contributions. You rock. Again, if you want to learn more about that, macgeekup.com/premium. Otherwise, go to macgeekup.com/reviews. Leave us a review. We would love to have your reviews on iTunes. They make a huge, huge difference. So that's what I got this week. You got anything to add to this, John, before we make our regularly scheduled weekly departure?
No, the only thing I got to add is some bulbs to my home.
That's right. All right. Well, let me know if support works for you. Otherwise, obviously, we can do it. But I think in order to add me to your eero network now, you'd have to call support anyway. So probably better just to get the job done. So, yeah.
I'm probably going to take the other paths just because.
If you have bandwidth in your 2.4 gigahertz range where you can set up like your guest router as on a different channel that's not being interfered with by your neighbors and not interfering with you. I agree. That's probably a better route to go. So, yeah, it's good. All right. That's what we got. Thanks so much for everything, folks. Thanks for visiting our sponsors. Of course, their URLs are macsales.com, plushcare.com/MGG, and mintmobile.com/MGG. Sponsors not mentioned in this episode. In fact, you can find all of our sponsors at macgeekup.com/sponsors. So just go check that out. And that even includes some sponsors that aren't active, but whose promos for you are still active. So we try. The goal is to help. That's what we do. That's what we try to do. All right, John, I got us into this one. So what do you got to say, my friend?
What do I have to say? Don't get caught.
Made on a Mac.
And we're out. Cool. I'm glad this new sound setup